Hey folks, your OS Reviews. You're watching our retro throwback review of the Wacom Graphire ET0405 graphic art tablet. This is one of their earlier tablets that you could pick up that used a USB 2.0 connector, so it works with Windows or Mac, and the most surprising thing is this still works with Windows 10 and Windows 8 almost flawlessly out of the packaging. Now it has 512 levels of pressure sensitivity, which isn't quite as great as more expensive options that we have today, but it still works pretty well. So as a graphic arts tablet, we have this electromagnetic pen that, if you press harder, simulates the experience of actually pressing a real pencil or pen on paper. It creates a harder line on screen with the correct software like Photoshop. And if you draw lighter, obviously it's going to create a lighter line. So it makes for a very realistic drawing and inking experience that was, quite special at the time. This sold retailed for around $300, so it wasn't cheap either. So the technology for this has also come down quite a bit as we see more pressure-sensitive styluses being incorporated into tablets like the iPad Pro, as well as even on more and more Windows-based computers, the effectiveness and the idea of something of a dedicated tablet is starting to decrease just because, it's not as much reason to get one, perhaps. With that being said, the Graphire tablet was unique because it also came with a optical mouse, which was also wireless, as you can guess. It uses the same technology as the pen, so both of these, the mouse and the pen, are battery-less, which is outstanding in my opinion. You don't need to ever replace batteries. You don't need to worry about popping in or losing some kind of nano receiver. Just plug in this one USB and you're ready to go. One limitation though is it has to work on the mat, just like the pen. So if you take this mouse outside of the mat on a surface, it's not going to work anymore. As long as it's on the mat itself, the electromagnets are sensing it, and it's going to work very well as far as browsing, using the cursor, clicking, and navigating around. Same thing with a pen. So let's take a closer look at this in terms of its design first. The first thing that you'll notice is its colorful shape and the fact that it comes in a number of various models that changes the color scheme. This was back in 2001, so it was when the earlier Macs were quite popular with its vibrant colors, and this tried to add the same touch in terms of its design and build. There's a nice pen holder on the very top of the tablet, and the surface of the active pressure pad is 4 by 5 inches. So this is a pretty portable and easy to take with you drawing pad that stows as well into a mouse pad. So it's nice and convenient. It's plug and play, although you can also find drivers that are still on Wacom's website today if you need one for your Windows or Mac computer. So the pen itself offers a pretty typical and ergonomic shape. You can see it's easy to grip, easy to draw on for extended periods of time, and there's integrated magnets and circuits, of course, if we slice it open. The pen tips or the nubs can be replaced if they get worn down over time, and there's a multifunction key that also acts as an OK key that is reprogrammable depending on the app that you're using. Flipping over the pen, you have access to the eraser, so you can automatically erase, and that's set up pretty much by default in all of the pressure-sensitive drawing apps that you'll want to try out. So very easy to use and also quite nice. There's a small LED indicator on the very top here which will illuminate orange when it's properly connected to a computer and power is flowing through. No dedicated power on or off switch is needed. When you tap on something or press on it or click, there's going to be a green icon just to tell you that, indeed you've clicked on something and that has been registered. The mousepad itself is made out of this nice plastic material that can be wiped down, cleaned. So you can kind of see this translucent material makes it easier to see almost the circuit board underneath, which is a pretty cool effect in my opinion. Otherwise, if we kind of take all of these pieces off and flip it over, we can see a bit more information about the tablet, including the color. This is the indigo version, made in Taiwan. Soft touch rubber feet that prevents it from sliding around on the surface or a desk. And again, reasonably slim and easy to take with you when you're traveling. Cable length, pretty good, around 1 meters, 1.2 meters long, so good enough to attach also to a desktop if you're using it at an extended angle or something like that. The mouse itself is also reasonable. You can see there are no real sensors on the bottom since it's basically operating on the same tech as the pen instead of a true optical sensor or kind of a older generation ball-based mechanical sensor. It's a much more clean looking. There are no real ports that can accumulate dust. There's a few rubber accents as well that makes it glide a little more easily on the surface. Click keys are pretty responsive. Scroll wheel feels much more stiff than I really wanted it to be, so you have to apply a bit more pressure. But on the plus side, it is color coordinated to match everything on the tablet. They did a nice job with the attention to details on this build. So next, let's plug everything in and show you guys how it functions as a drawing tool. To demonstrate functionality, I'm going to use Speedy Painter, which is a free program that offers pressure sensitivity and seems to work right off the bat. So I can just hover my cursor around and it works. It only applies a stroke when I press down. In this program, I can change things like the size of the brush, in addition to the transparency of the canvas, and I'm able to change the color on the scroll wheel on the very top here, as well as zoom in and out of the image. So let's say I want to draw something, maybe let's say a tree. You can see that as I press harder, it definitely creates a firmer line, versus pressing softer, it creates a very faint line. So you can also zoom into your image, of course, to get more detail or capture more detail and kind of shade and create some texture. Not only is this great for artists or video game designers, if you're someone who also does a lot of storyboarding, you're designing a product or you're doing brainstorming, this is critical to also capture your ideas onto electronic format, as opposed to using just pen and paper and then having to scan it or take an image with it. It's not quite as elegant and not quite as fast or intuitive. So test. You can see it's very responsive, captures your fingers quite well. One thing that a lot of people have pointed out when first looking at graphic art tablets is, whether it really is easy to use, because you have the tablet in one place and then the screen is in another place. But the truth is, after using it for just a few seconds, you get used to it, and then you can reorient it yourself, and your fingers kind of adjust naturally to what the position a movement corresponds to on screen, and then it really isn't that big of a difference to just simply drawing on the display itself. So not a huge complaint there. Obviously, not having a screen on the tablet means that you can rest your palm on it. There's no issues in terms of rejection or accidentally triggering something, so that works pretty well. This software in particular gives us a lot of tricks as well, so even with 512 levels of sensitivity, I can already do quite a bit. So if I can shade in some images, create some light colors, I can also tap on erase by flipping things over, and then doing that, you can see the eraser also is pressure sensitive with 512 levels. And if I'm satisfied with this image, I can play it back as a video or save it. So I can start a replay, for instance, and that's what it looks like. Taking a look at some other samples that I sketched using this pad, you can see again, it's really fun to doodle and play around with even if you're not an artist, and have fun with programs like this. It gives you a lot more possibilities. And if you use the pen, it can also be just like a regular mouse. It actually gives you a more ergonomic position because your wrist is actually perpendicular, and that is a posture that prevents carpal tunnel syndrome. So having kind of vertical mouses is another trend and a kind of a niche market. So if you just use the pen as a cursor, it does work pretty well for that as well. That's another application. Let's go back and look at some other images. So here's the kind of photographed version of that inverted. And here's one with a sample storyboard. If I'm looking at, let's say, an Alexa entry or trying to craft an app, this gives me a better idea of what I'm doing and sketching my ideas out using this. And one last example, again, of some light shading, just really quickly sketching out your ideas. It's quite simple to use, just feels like a natural pen and paper with your pressure. And 512 levels already gives you a lot of highlights as well as a sensitivity to what you're doing. You can always zoom on into your image and then create more fine detail and zoom out. So that's been a throwback retro review of the Wacom first generation Graphire tablet. Definitely a pretty iconic looking tablet that performs well. Obviously the price has gone down significantly since then, and we have slimmer as well as more integrated solutions. But the biggest surprise is it still works quite well, and the technology kind of pioneered back in the day in 2001. A decade ago, still performs really well and is used commercially by artists and digital game designers today. And even if you pick this one up now, I would say on Amazon or eBay, you can find one used or get one at a reduced price. I would still say it's definitely usable and worth considering if you want a really portable and small companion to a computer that might lack a built-in Wacom stylus or pressure-sensitive stylus. So thanks for watching this video here at OS Reviews. This has been a throwback look at the Wacom first